Welcome everybody again to our turn session on learning more about the Office of Sponsored Programs and when to work with our office. At first, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Tom Cruz. I'm the Director of Sponsored Programs. And the agenda for today, if I can move my slides. So here are some of the topics we're going to cover today. Just an overview of sponsored programs. With that overview, I'll talk a little bit about some of the ways that we help folks write proposals and manage their grants. So that includes some of the administrative and programmatic services that my office assists with. The types of funding that we handle, which is really important as we continue to grow our research and scholarly activities. We see more than just grants that come through our office. So I want to highlight a big emphasis on some of the external funding that we receive that's not just typically grants, even though grants are the bulk of the workload. We do handle other forms of funding, and we'll talk about that. And a timeline for when to work with our office. So if you're new to grant writing, just some general guidelines on when to start the process. Working with us, as you know, if you've ever been a part of a grant or have written a grant, you do know that a lot of it is short turnaround time, right? So these are some tips and some ways to help you build a timeline on when to connect with us and what that timeline looks like throughout the process of writing a grant. So kind of like different things going on here, but we want to just try to illustrate kind of what we do and how we help those write grants, what type of grants that we go after, and then again wrapping that up with some good suggested tips, timelines, and all that. As always, this is an informal question. I have slides out to guide us along the way, but please feel free to interject or ask questions as they come up. Again, totally informal and looking for a good, engaging conversation. So we'll go ahead and get started. So basically, an overview of my office is we support all faculty and staff in their pursuit of external funding that benefits the university, its students, and the faculty, right? So, and we'll get into various ways on how we handle that, but we are a full support office. We're here to support and serve the community. And again, if there's any interest in finding grant opportunities or you have an opportunity in mind, again, that's what this office is set up to do. So we look forward to working with individuals who have an interest in doing that. And again, a lot of it's going to be prefaced on the pre-award side, which means proposal development, proposal writing, submission. But do know that we also have handled post-award. So the office is kind of structured into two different areas: the pre-award, who we work with faculty on, again, developing proposals, budgets, and that sort of thing. And then the back half of the office is our post-award office, and we help the folks who have won grants. We help them manage the grant, right? So manage the spending, manage the reporting, just basically, again, providing that good, solid resource to make sure that we successfully complete the grant and complete all the objectives that we said we were going to do in our proposal. Here's our website at the end. I encourage everybody to go out and look at it. We try to keep it updated. We have a lot of information out on our website to include several things that unfortunately, we won't be able to talk about today due to time constraints, but things like internal grant opportunities, right? So we have a funding opportunities page that goes out and gives you tips on, how to find funding, but also some of our internal funding opportunities that we provide to the university community. So just to talk about ways how we support faculty, administratively, I should say, and this is no different than any other sponsored programs office on other campuses, on other universities, right? So what we do, and these are just some of the things that we do, but I would like to highlight some of the key areas that we help. We help disseminate funding opportunities to faculty. We do that through various sources, whether that's through quarterly newsletters that come out in our research and scholarly activities newsletter that goes out quarterly, and everybody's on it. but we try to feature opportunities there. We subscribe to other databases that we compile opportunities and blast them out to the campus community. But a lot of times we get as we get new faculty members and what their interests are, we we send like like opportunities to individuals too. And again, these are opportunities that we have found that best fit your interests, the university's mission, and opportunities that provide us a great deal of success in trying to go after grants. I mean, we obviously can't guarantee like every grant that goes out of sponsored programs gets awarded, but we do like to provide at least opportunities that are viable, you know, to obviously to you, but also to the mission of Radford and the composition of Radford too. Also, we prepare budgets and other financial forms. I know as you get to write grants, you'll learn that there's a lot of administrative trivia that goes into writing grants, a lot of boilerplate type forms. We take care of all that, right? So what we try to focus on is taking care of all the administrative constraints or the burdensome boilerplate forms and letting our faculty who have the technical expertise have time to do what they do best, and that's concentrate on the technical components while we knock out all the administrative stuff. So with that, with the budgets, financial forms, budget justifications, support and assistance with yeah, you know, depending on the sponsor, but bio sketches and all these other different forms. A big and yeah, if you have a question, go ahead and interject or in the comments. I'll try to keep up if in the chat. I'm not always good at that, but I'll try to keep up with it. I'm flying solo today. Yeah, if you have anything, just reach out or informally just ask. Helping with the agency guidelines. So what that means is most of the time when you apply for a grant, there's going to be a set of guidelines, whether it's called the RFP or solicitation or broad agency announcement, whatever. Each sponsor pretty much has its own terms for what they call it, but essentially it's the rules of how the proposal gets submitted, and obviously the rules on how the proposal gets put together in terms of what all they're looking for. These things could be a few pages, 2 or 3, 5 pages, and it could go up to like 100 pages I've seen. So regardless of what the sponsor is, what we do is we help interpret that to you in terms of checklist and things for you to concentrate on, and, you know, kind of leave it to us to kind of, you know, make sure that you're headed down the right path. And we try to do that, like I said, through providing checklists and, you know, those sort of things. It's encouraged that all of our grant writers understand and read the agency guidelines, but again, that's something that we'll help you with. And then initiate proposal routing. So when you write a proposal, an external proposal through our office, we have to do an internal routing sheet where it gets signed off by your college, or excuse me, your department, your college, and then the provost office. So what we do is we handle all that, right? So we'll do all the internal paperwork for you, get you to sign as the principal investigator, and then route that through for university approval. And then my office, at the end of the day, once everything's compiled and collected and we're good with it, you're good with the final product, we submit the proposals on behalf of you and on behalf of the university as well. So do know that this office has a vast level of experience doing that, so you're in good hands. And then of course, obviously we'll provide copies of the proposals back to you for your records, but we handle all that. Usually what you'll find is when you submit proposals, particularly federal government proposals, that you have to be registered for these systems. So do know that we're already registered. We have appropriate credentials and all that, because a lot of times what you'll find in the guidelines is a series of pages that just typically talk about you have to have all this thing set up well in advance before you write a grant. You have to get all these numbers in place. Again, we have all that. So, and that's something that we do for you. One thing that we've added, particularly last fall, actually about a year and a half ago, I should say, is ramping up our programmatic, or what we consider our technical support in the office. while we have a lot of people that can handle the administrative end, we have been blessed to have resources in place to have a couple of different options for you to utilize in terms of helping out with the technical components of the proposal. I'll talk about the first option, and that's Hanover Research. It's a external consulting firm that my office pays for. That's free access to you. That helps review proposals, provides comments and editing and that sort of thing. And Hanover handles pretty much all proposals, but they're definitely geared towards federal proposals. They have consultants all over that we work with all over the United States, and each consultant has certain expertise in federal agencies. So if you're interested in, the National Science Foundation or NIH or HRSA even, that they have consultants that have written these grants that can provide good, solid feedback for us. And like I said, we've been using Hanover probably for 5 years, and they do provide our training, and we'll talk about outreach in a minute. But so they're good partners to work with, and I think most of the faculty who have used them have been quite pleased with the feedback that they have received from Hanover. So that's one way. The other way too is we do have an in-house. So I wish she was part of the call, but unfortunately she couldn't make it today. But Dr. Pam Frazier is our faculty mentor, our faculty proposal development mentor. And if you don't know Pam, Pam is a full professor in the Department of Health and Human Performance in the College of Education. And Pam has been writing grants most of her career. She's done it at other schools, other R1 schools. So she's been pretty much a grant writer her entire academic career. So we're blessed to have a significant portion of her time in our office. That way she works one-on-one with faculty members, providing that good, solid support in terms of helping you with the research design, coming up with timelines, developing charts, logic models, just things that can be time consuming, but obviously requirements to the proposal. Pam helps with. And what we have done last fall, is we established a faculty grant writing cohort. We call it an early career scholar. Not necessarily early career in terms of your tenure at Radford, but early career for beginning grant writers, right? So anybody who's just starting out writing grants, we've held, I think, five faculty members were part of our cohort, where Pam goes over and talk, and I think once a week there's like a lecture on different types of grant writing tips and things to work on. We invite guests in. We've invited guests all over campus to talk about certain things, such as if you deal with human or animal subjects, we'll invite folks from the research compliance office or the respective committees over to talk to the group about things that you need to be thinking about in terms of submitting your protocol. So basically, even though the grant writing cohort is geared towards grant writing, but it's really geared towards research and scholarship in general, right? So like the library, we brought research librarians over to talk about how to utilize their resources. So again, it's getting early career people acclimated to the resources around them, and also talk about ways that we can, collaborate together. For an example, several of our or at least a couple of our faculty on the grant writing cohort who didn't know each other beforehand collaborated on an external proposal and won a proposal. So through the Commonwealth of Virginia. So that's kind of cool. And let's see, and for the last year was the first year with that we have been blessed to have graduate assistant support through the graduate school, and we're getting a GA this fall too. So what our GA did last year was, again, provide that back end support, helping out with graphic design work, based on the experience of the graduate students, which I think we'll have a good experienced student this year that can help out with literature searches. Again, trying to take away some of those time constraints that from faculty members, again, so that you can worry about your expertise, working with Pam on the research design, That way we can knock out the administrative parts and maybe some of the other back end parts that a graduate students can do, like lit searches, graphic design type work. So that's kind of successful last year. So we hope it continues this year as well. Because I know a lot of the people that Pam and I meet, obviously writing the proposals tough enough as it is, but there's only so much time with your teaching and other university committees and all that there's no way to do all these things. So again, we're trying to bring in that sort of administrative and technical expertise to help carve out some of those duties. So does anybody have any questions up to this point? Okay, good. One of the other areas that we have kind of grown in are different types of funding mechanisms that are coming through to the university that aren't necessarily grants. So I want to spend some time to devote on what type of funding does the Office of Sponsored Programs actually handle, right? Because a lot of folks that have been here on campus for a long time just um, kind of see sponsored programs as the grant office, right? And we even have it in our name, grants management. And I just wanted to illustrate the point that yes, grants comprise of the bulk of our work, right? It's where the bulk of the money is at, particularly through federal grants. When you look at our portfolio, some 75% of what we do comes from the federal government through grants. But we do handle other types of funding and other types of funding that you may eventually come across, right, through collaborations with people from the outside. You meet external collaborators. And so what's been happening in the past is just that, right? We've had faculty members that work at other universities or collaborate with other universities or collaborate with other entities, I should just say. And there's other funding mechanisms that have come as a result of that, right? So it's particularly contracts and MOUs or MOAs. MOUs is memorandum of understanding and memorandum of agreement. So basically, I'll just start from the top of the bullet. So grants are going to be your discretionary grants that state and governmental agencies distribute out to the for this purposes academic community, right? They're competitive. Usually you're applying off of a solicitation. And with that solicitation, again, you're basically writing a proposal in accordance to how that particular entity or particular agency wants you to write that proposal. And then it gets submitted usually through some sort of portal that your sponsored programs office is set up to submit. That's pretty much grants in a nutshell, and that's the bulk of our work. But there are other agreements that I want to call your attention to that are outside of that, right? So cooperative agreements are outside of that. So cooperative agreements would be if you have an entity, let's just use the federal government for an example. So the federal government wants to partner with you on your research, but they have a significant interest in that. It's kind of different from grants, where grants, the significant interest is typically, they want you to solve some problem or some sort of issue or problem or whatever the case may be that benefits society, has the overall gist of writing the greatest to benefit society. Whereas cooperative agreements are a little bit more specific. Yes, it might have a benefit to society as a whole, but in this case, the government's going to have a significant hand in helping you do the work. So we handle those. Those are cooperative agreements. What's happening more oftentimes is the next bullet that I want to, spend some time on is the contracts, the memorandum of understandings, and the memorandum of agreements. And those are cases where you meet a collaborator or whether it's through a partnership on work or a collaborator that is in a private industry. These certainly happen commonly in the private industry where you're going to get approached to do contract work, right? And by contract work, I mean work that you're doing on behalf of your appointment at Radford. Because I know if you're a faculty member at Radford, there is some flexibility within the faculty handbook where you can, based on your knowledge and expertise in certain areas, you can consult right outside of the institution. like the institution's giving you those hours to do. But so what I'm talking about is exclusively your role as a faculty member here at Radford, right? So you're going to be, you're going to be doing the work as part of your appointment at Radford, using Radford resources, using Radford students, et cetera. So, right. So these are contracts that we enter in with private companies, and it kind of works as the same way of grants, right? They're paying you they're paying you money, or paying you your time, your summertime or whatever, to do work. Let's just say in this case to do research for them. And if you ever get approached by that, please reach out to us by our office, because a lot of times, what we've seen in the past is faculty members are finding themselves in those situations and not really knowing to come through sponsored programs, because technically it's not a grant, right? So if they didn't know any better, then they're not going to come through sponsored programs. And what they're finding out is, once they're solidifying this contract work, and then trying to bring the money into the institution, that they're being redirected to sponsor programs, and we got to start the whole process over again. Like I mentioned earlier, the internal routing, the proposed. So again, it'll save yourself a lot of time to just reach out to sponsor programs, whether you have an interest about a grant, or your approach to do some sort of work through a contract or MOU. It's best just to always reach out and sponsor programs. And while true, we handle all sources of funding, but we also work with others on campus. So if it's a scenario where maybe it's not really a sponsored programs thing, right? We know where you should go to, because we have connections through other offices on campus. I'll give you an example. So we were approached by one individual through some sort of contract work that they were going to fund, like scholarships, right? So looked at it and said, well, no, this isn't a sponsored project. They're not funding a project per se. It's more philanthropic. So we shifted over to the advancement office, right? So, but it's really best to reach out to us, because like I said, we work with other folks on campus, and we can kind of determine what the color of money is and how it should be set up appropriately, so that there's no delay or downtime for you to wait while we have to set up all these different things after the fact, right? Does anybody have any questions about that? So I should say, typically, yes, we do handle the grants, and 70-80% of the cases these are going to come through grants, and you're going to come through us and work with us. But I just wanted to let everybody know that we do handle other forms of funding. So yeah, so we're looking pretty good on time. So let's talk about, when should you contact sponsor programs, and what does that look like? So I built out the timeline here. So if we address the question of when should I make contact with sponsor programs, that answer is going to be immediately. And let me define what immediately is. Immediately can be as soon as you found an opportunity, or as soon as you come up with an idea, right? Because a lot of times, now that we have Pam on board, we're talking to faculty members who aren't even ready to write a grant proposal yet. They just have this cool idea where they're going to solve some sort of problem, or do some sort of community engagement work, or bring on have students that they want to do these cool activities for. And that is 100% fine. That's what we want, right? We want faculty members, or anyone for that matter, coming in our office well beforehand. And even before we can identify funding, because the sooner you make contact with sponsored programs, you get on our radar, right? So when we find opportunities through our back channels, we can send them to you. But we literally keep a running list of people who we talk to and what their interests are, so that not only do we send those opportunities out to you as we find them, also we talk to other people, and other people might want to collaborate with you, right? So there's been plenty of cases where Pam and I have talked to faculty members, kind of getting to know them and getting to know what they're interested in terms of their work. And, a few weeks later, a month later, we talk to somebody else who may have a void or may have a need or a gap to fill in their project that could utilize your skill set. So we've we've made plenty of matches and collaborations like that. So again, in order to set yourself up for success, schedule an appointment with us as soon as possible, right? As soon as you have that idea, regardless if you have funding or not, or you found funding, because again, that's something that we can help you with. Next, so when we do have a funding opportunity in place, right? So then we need to start preparing ourselves on when to apply, right? So if you do get notified, and again, these are just general timelines. Obviously, it's going to vary on when you found an opportunity and how long we got, because to be honest with you, there are some opportunities where it's just a quick turnaround, right? So this is kind of like a generic timeline, best case scenario timeline, I should say. So, yeah, so notify sponsored programs up to 3 months, I should say, before the deadline when an opportunity is found. And the reason I say 3 months is it gives us a good solid basis to start preparing like our office so that we can help you and help stagger our resources accordingly. So the more that, again, you come and talk to us early and when opportunities are found, if we have that window of what I call flexibility, then we can truly maximize all of our resources that we're going to devote to you, right? And what does that mean, right? So that can mean at the proposal development stage, right? So when you begin working with sponsored programs on the proposal development stage, we might need a 3 to 4 weeks prior, 3 to 4 weeks prior to the deadline to develop that proposal for you. Not that it's tough and difficult, because that's something that we do every day, but there's things that could change, right? So as you're talking to Pam about some technical things, there might be some items that you haven't realized that you need in your budget. So again, the more that we have this window of opportunity to do the budget, revise the budget, at least thinking about, other things that we may not have originally included, that gives us a good solid window to work with. And also that within that 3 to 4 week window is if you want to contract with Hanover, right? So I mentioned previously, Hanover is our external consultants, and they really require up to a 4 week notification prior to the deadline. Again, we're talking deadline, we're talking about the sponsor's deadline. So, and the reason for that is so that they can stage their resources accordingly, right? Because they have consultants all over the United States. And if you're writing, let's just say, for an example, in National Institute of Health grant, an NIH grant, that they know that they can put that grant in that individual's hands within a 4 week period, and that individual can do that consultant can do their due diligence in reviewing that and providing that good critique. So what we're talking about specifically in that scenario would be a draft of your work, right? A draft of the narrative. So if we can have a good working draft of the project 4 weeks prior to the deadline, that way Hanover can provide that good solid critique. Again, that's if you want to use Hanover, right? So Hanover wants that. So once we're going through the timeline and we're getting things developed, we got to pay particular attention to internal routing. So before, as mentioned earlier, before projects go or leave sponsor programs and is submitted to external sponsors, they have to be prior approved by your department, your college, the provost, and in certain cases other people, depending on the type of proposal submission it is. So what I suggest to faculty members is let's plan on routing that document 1 to 2 weeks prior to the deadline. Say 1 to 2 weeks because it's going to vary. Usually we can get by with 1 week prior to the deadline. So if you focus in exclusively on the internal routing approval process, we're only talking about internal deadline, right? None of these documents go to the sponsor, because concurrently we're going to be working on what this goes to the sponsor, right? So these are internal paperwork that my office prepares. You sign off as the PI, your co-PIs, if you have any, sign off, and they get routed, right? They get routed to your college and excuse me, your department, your college and all that. We handle all of that, right? So I just wanted to call your attention to there. We do have a separate internal deadline going on at the same time that, if we can get it in 1 to 2 weeks, that seems like ample time to get administrators to sign off on the proposal. And then we're down to the end, right? By that time, when you're getting down to a week, 2 weeks out, the proposals is maybe not finalized, but it's becoming pretty close to being final, right? I mean, saying some changes, some adjustments. The budget should be relatively locked down and final, but right, we're working on just tidying up things, maybe getting feedback back from Pam Hanover, incorporating those. So the proposal's nearing its end, I should say, which leads us up to the submission part. And in the submission part, what we typically suggest is, a 1 to 2 day prior to the deadline, let's submit the grant. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. But I should start off and say, yes, true, technically, all sponsors have usually either it's a 5 p.m. deadline, 5 p.m. Eastern deadline, or 11:59 midnight, what we call midnight deadline, 11:59 p.m. Technically, yes, as we can submit the grant at 4 o'clock or 4:50 or at 10:30 at night, before the guidelines. Before the deadline. What I suggest to do it a day or maybe even 2 days prior, for a couple of different reasons. One, depending on the grant you're going after, let's just say, for an example, it's a federal grant and it's a popular deadline submission. And what I mean by popular deadline submission is not necessarily popular for your particular grant that you're going after, but it could be pretty popular for the agency as a whole, right? So let's just take, again, we're picking on NIH. So let's just take National Institutes of Health, right? So your proposal might be due the same day as other NIH proposals are due under different opportunities, right? That has nothing to do with yours. So these things go in on one system. And depending on if it's a popular deadline, you're talking about, a very popular sponsor where a lot of agencies, not only a lot of academic a lot of academic institutions apply to, but hospitals, medical schools, whatever, they can receive a lot of proposals in that one system, and it could bog the system down. And I've unfortunately been through scenarios, more particularly in my prior life at another institution, where we've missed out on the deadline because the system just spins, because we try to cram it in at the last minute, and it's being held up because of all these other people that are waiting for the last minute too. And unfortunately, by the time it accepted our proposal, it was well after the deadline, and we missed out. So that's a very important reason to do that, to submit, early. The second biggest reason too, which arguably could be the first biggest reason, is some sponsors, if you submit, a couple days early and they review it, and if we're missing something, that we've seen cases where they've came back to us and said, hey, look, if you can clean this up or add this or do these other things and make changes to your proposal, you can still resubmit it and get it back in before the official deadline. So that's another good reason to submit early as well. And then just while we're doing great on time. So some final takeaways, right? Particularly, if you're new to the university or new to grant writing in general, some things to think about, right? Again, I cannot emphasize enough, contact sponsored programs as early as possible, regardless, right? Regardless if we found funding or whatever the case may be. We do really want to hear about all the cool ideas you have. So again, whether you have funding or not, or whether you found funding or not, or whether you're not even in at the stage of writing anything yet, right? You're not, it's what we call pre-development stage. Yeah, come see us and talk to us, because again, you get on our radar, and we know what you're interested in, obviously, so for funding, but we also know that if there could be collaborators out there for you as well. Um, Again, do not apply to any sponsor without coming through sponsor programs first. It's kind of difficult and impossible to do on the federal government end because you'll need your sponsor programs office and my credentials to do that. But this kind of goes back to the contract and MOU scenarios where you're approached by a private entity or another university or whatever the case may be about some contract work. Come see us, right? Yeah, don't apply until you come talk to sponsor programs. Take advantage of our resources and expertise. We're essentially, that's all we are. The office is just one big resource of and expertise of people that we have in the office that have been doing this for a very long time. Um, Thankfully, we have resources at our disposal that we can tap into to best make our faculty's proposal the most competitive it can be. And as mentioned, those resources vary, right? They can be, external consultants or also resources, internal resources such as our Sea Grant program. So I encourage everybody to go out and explore on our website our internal grant opportunity program. Just to give a quick plug about it, we accept proposals beginning next month in September, and it'll continue on until April. So it's a rolling deadline from September to April. These grants go up to $10,000. And again, while we help write external proposals, we'll help you with on your internal grant too. So if you have an idea that maybe it needs to go to an internal grant first, yeah, come see us and we'll be happy to help write your grant, review your grant, provide the budget, those sorts of things. Because I will say our internal grant program, it is peer reviewed, right? So we have your peers across campus who are evaluating proposals monthly and are scoring and ranking proposals based on certain criteria or rubric. So one of the good news about the rolling deadline, unfortunately, if you don't get the grant, let's say you submit a grant in October and you don't get it, well, you can usually, well, I shouldn't say usually, every time that we don't fund a project, we will give you back feedback from the committee. That way you can take the feedback, work with us, incorporate that feedback into revising your proposal, and you can submit it again the following month or whenever, right? So there's multiple opportunities to submit these grants. So please, yeah, just take advantage of the resources and the expertise that you have here in the office. Yeah, and again, this kind of goes back to the proposal, the deadline. If all possible, yeah, let's try to submit this proposal, the external proposal, 1 to 2 days prior to the deadline. That way, we can get it in. And like I said, in certain scenarios, sponsors can come back to us and tell us to revise things. And then we can take their suggestion and then submit it and then resubmit it or whatever. Like I said, it's very important to do. And I do understand in certain cases that's not optimal or that's just not realistic based on, I know there's some scenarios where we just found out about a grant. We got to hurry up and submit it. So it's all hands on deck and, stop, drop and roll because, we got a quick, some truncated time schedule or a quick time schedule. And those things happen. We're not going to turn any proposals away if they're, inside the 1 day, right? So we're going to work with you the best we can. It's just the more that we have enough lead time, the better that we can provide good, solid, sound support to you. And again, can't emphasize enough, but please do remember that, sorry, there's a typo there, but please do remember that all sources of external funding are accepted here in this office, not just grants. And again, if there are any uncertainties whatsoever of what you're interested in or what you've been approached by another colleague from somewhere else, just ask us, right? So based on our involvement and communications with other people across campus, we can determine where you need to go pretty quickly. And that's all I have for the presentation. Does anybody have any questions or any thoughts or anything that wasn't covered or was covered that you have any that just doesn't make sense and you need some clarification on? Okay, great. I appreciate everybody's participation today. Thank you again for coming out and learning a little bit more about sponsored programs, how we can help you. Please feel free to reach out to us. There's our staff contacts. If you want a copy of this presentation, at least for the contacts alone, just let me know. Send me an email, tcruz@radford.edu. And I'll be glad to send you the presentation, and I'll be glad to sit down with you, Pam, as well. I mean, unfortunately, Pam wasn't able to make it today, but yeah, please feel free to reach out to one of us because we look forward to hearing from you and working with you and on your projects, right? Or anything that you want to talk about. So we love cool ideas that people have, and if we can throw dollars at them, that's even better, right? But I do appreciate everybody's time today. And oh, there's a question here. Okay, yeah, thank you. Thanks, Peter. You're awesome. And yeah, we've worked with Peter in the past. So again, if you're new or have worked with us in the past, we enjoy what we do. So again, I thank everybody for coming out today and participate in the presentation and look forward to working with you. So hope everyone has a great rest of the day.